One of my favorite things that Bill Evans does, and I notice it every time I listen, is what happens inside the chords when the melody is holding. See, as the melody is holding, the chords beneath it keep moving, they keep breathing. But beginning jazz piano players just hold the chords, they leave that space empty, and I think that's a real missed opportunity. Today, I'm going to show you step by step the individual techniques that you need to know to create that inner movement. And then at the end of the video, we're going to come back to My Romance and look at exactly how Bill Evans uses these same techniques in his recording on Waltz for Debby. So here's an example of something a beginning piano player might play. When we get to the end of the phrase, it comes back to the one chord. And then they just sit here because they've done everything the chart tells them to do. It's really important for us to realize right away that even though our lead sheets say this chord happens at this time, it's really easy to think vertically about I have to play the chord at exactly this moment. Actually, what we should be doing is trying to think about how to play them horizontally, how to work our way into and out of those chords melodically. Oftentimes, we rely on the chord changes themselves to be the motion in our tune, right? Because moving from one chord to the next creates such great harmonic movement. But if we're only playing the movements that are baked into the changes, where do we get to put our own personality and feeling into it? The lead sheet for My Romance has chords changing every 2 beats, and by that nature, there's already quite a lot of motion built in here. Even though I could hear these kind of movements because I recognized them from my favorite recordings, I had no idea how to start putting them in place, and that's because I didn't understand the kind of fundamental basic movements between chords. Let's look at bars 3 and 4 here of My Romance. We have a D minor 7 that goes to G7 and then lands on C major. It's a classic 2-5-1 in the key of C major. So I'm playing kind of fancy voicings here, playing rootless voicings in my right hand, and my left hand is pretending it's the bass player. And even though I've got all these colorful notes in here, there's actually only one note in each chord that's doing all the heavy lifting. There's one kind of hidden movement in here that creates all that nice gravity that draws us through the progression. And that is the 7th of the chord. Check it out. So on the D minor, the 7th of D minor is C. And this D minor chord is going to a G7 chord. And the 3rd of the G7 chord is B. So notice these are a half step apart. C to B. In fact, if I erase every other note from those chords and play just this, you can kind of hear that D minor to G7 sound in there, right? And the same thing happens when I go from the G7 to C. So the 7th of our G7 is F, and going to the 3rd of our C chord, E. It's a half step down. So to add instant movement to a 2-5 or a 5-1, you can just look for that 7 and maybe try to find a way to tell a more interesting story about how it goes from 7 to 3. Milk it a little bit, right? And then maybe down here, 7, and come up that way. So when I show you this Bill Evans example here in a minute, I want you to watch. You're going to find these 7 to 3 decorations all over his playing. By the way, every Wednesday, I send out a free newsletter, and inside that newsletter, I take one really small jazz playing technique and I break it down for you, and then I give you a practical, specific set of instructions that you should practice that week. For the last few months, we've been learning how to solo over the blues, and it's been so fun to watch the people in my community learn these little tips and put them in their playing, and they've really leveled up. The link to sign up for that is down in the pinned comment below. Have you ever come across a chart where you're just stuck holding one chord for 2, 3, 4 bars, and there's all this space to fill and you don't know what to do because you've always relied on the changes to be that movement for you? But what many of us don't realize is that even static chords have movement baked into them. So in that spirit, I want to show you a couple very specific simple moves that you can put over any major chord, any minor chord, or any dominant chord to create this kind of tension and release movement. We said we could take a C major chord, and we can move the 3rd up to the 4 and then bring it back down. That 4 has tension that is resolved by moving it to this 3rd. You can do the same thing on the 6th of the chord. So the 6th of C major is A, and that A wants to resolve down a whole step to G. Or we can do both of these moves at the same time, taking the 4 and the 6 and moving them down to 3 and 5. But what about minor chords? Well, there's a really fun one. If you're playing like a minor 6 chord, right, with an A on top. Well, this is our resolved note. So to create tension, let's put a B natural on top. And then bring the B natural down. That B natural is a really interesting note. It's the major 7 on a minor chord and has so much tension. And just like we did with the major chord, what if we paired it with another note? What if we put the 9 going to the root on it also? So we get this. Isn't that nice? Now, of course, there's a special place for this on dominant chords because the entire reason a dominant chord exists is to create tension, which is then resolved by the next chord. But because the dominant chord itself is already in tension, we don't want to do tension and release, right? We're going to let the movement to the next chord be the release. We're going to take a chord that's already in tension, like this G7, and we're going to crank the dial to give it even more tension so that it's just calling for us. The gravity is that much stronger to bring us back home. So let me spell this out for you. We're going to take a diatonic G7 chord, meaning we are putting some colorful extensions on top of this chord. I have the 9th, the 13th, and even that sus4 here in my right hand. All these notes fit in the key of C major, right? These are all white notes. But to ramp these up, we're gonna make these altered. So the 9 is gonna become flat 9. The 13 is gonna become flat 13. And I'm gonna resolve the sus from 4 to 3. So you get this. And you can hear like the knife is twisting a little bit before it gets resolved to 1. So in the 8 bars from Bill Evans that I'm about to show you, he does this move, I think 3 times. So this is a move that you really want to get under your hands because you're going to use it all the time. We've talked a little bit about how there's baked in movement from a 2 chord to the 5 chord or from the 5 chord to the 1 chord. But we encounter all kinds of other changes than that. So we need to understand a few more principles that will help us move between other chord progressions. Let's take a look at bar 4. We just landed right here on C major. Now our next chord is E7, the 3 dominant chord. Now C to E is not a 2-5 or a 5-1, so our standard kind of gravity moves don't work here. We're gonna have to be a little bit more inventive. The first thing to do here is to look at the 2 chords back to back and look for individual connections from one note to a note of the next chord. So let's look here. Here's C6 and here's E7. So let's start with the C in the C6. What note could this connect to in the E7 chord? Well, it could go down to the 5th, right? That's the B, which is the 5th of that E7 chord. Or maybe we could go up to the D. And we can get a little bit creative with how we move between these. Or the other way. Looking at the E next, obviously the E is in both chords, right? It's the 3rd of C and it's the 1 of E7. But just because the 2 notes are the same doesn't mean they can't be connected and doesn't mean that we can't move into them. What we're going to do is create a stepwise line that moves from this E and back into itself. So maybe we would do something like, or go the other direction. So what about the next one, G? Well, the closest note that connects with G is probably the G sharp in the E7 chord. So of course we can create movements from G up to that G sharp. And what about the 6th? Here in C6, our 6th note is A, and it connects nicely with the G sharp in the E7 chord. It's a nice half step movement down. In fact, it really kind of nicely resembles what we saw in our 2-5s. We could also go up to the 5th there as well. So these moves are great, but there's more that we can do. Just by connecting these with 1 or 2 little chromatic moves is really nice and subtle, but sometimes we want to take a bigger journey. Sometimes we want more bold movement than this. So let's explore an idea. What if we decided we wanted to go from the 3rd of the C chord, that's E, to the 3rd of the E7 chord? So we could do something similar and just walk up the scale to it. But what what if we decided we wanted to milk it a little bit more? So here I just added a half-step approach to the E, came up an arpeggio, and then came down chromatically to land on it in time. The big thing I want you to take away from this is that by creating tension, our audience has an implied understanding that you're going to resolve it. So with this in mind, you have great responsibility to create that tension. So many beginning jazz students I hear are afraid of the tension, but the tension is where all the interest is. What you're about to see in this Bill Evans excerpt is that when the music gives him an opportunity to play something in tension, oh boy, does he take it, and he really milks it. As we get better at this, we are learning how to create movement with single notes inside of our chords, which is great. But if we look at what Bill Evans does, he's oftentimes moving more than one note at a time, or he's moving them in longer sequences. I could pretend that this next story is all about my students, but it's not. It's all about me. For many years, I got pretty comfortable with creating these little single note movements and these melodic connections between the different chords, and they sounded pretty good, but I would listen to Bill Evans play where he would create these bigger gestures with more than one note moving at a time. And I was so intimidated by that, but I got so obsessed that I had to figure out what he was doing. Of course, Bill is playing freely and creatively. He's not constrained by any set of rules. But I did kind of notice two patterns that we can look at. What if we took this same idea? When we land here on this C major chord, we're going to E7. Instead of moving in a single note, what if we moved in thirds? So we take two notes, B and D, and we move down the scale in parallel. We call this parallel motion because these two notes are moving in the same direction. But we could also move these in contrary motion. So maybe we start on a C, and we're gonna move our two notes, you can't see my hands, move our two notes in opposite directions. And maybe we could even fill in the chords as we go. That is such a classic Bill Evans kind of sound. All right, so here are 8 bars from Bill Evans playing My Romance from the album Waltz for Debby. It's right out of the beginning, right at the intro. And the beginning sounds like this. And we see a couple of our moves there already. It's just 3 notes. We've already seen a couple. So here on our first chord, we've got a G7, but with a C in it. And that C is our sus4. And if you look at the next beat, it moves down to B. We also have that thing where the dominant chord is using all diatonic extensions. So we've got a natural 9 and a natural 13. And then in the second half of this bar, you get flat 13 and flat 9. And then there's the C major chord. Very colorful C major voicing, I should add, with a half step on the bottom. As we move into the next phrase, we've got an interesting thing happening. Our melody is going up. And our bass, see that connection between the E chord, the root of the E, going down a half step, and then down a half step to that D. So we've got a connection between E minor and D minor. But buried in the middle here is actually another one. So on beat 1, we have a G. On beat 3, when our left hand goes down to E flat, it turns into G flat. Again, on the D minor chord, our left hand goes down to D, and our right hand comes down to F. So even inside this line, G, G flat to F. So looking at our next measure, this G7 chord does the same kind of diatonic to altered move that we've seen before. Here's the diatonic one with the natural 13. In the next beat, it becomes E flat. So in this case, he actually connects this E to E flat down another half step to D. That D is the 9th of the C major chord. Now we looked at a bunch of different options for E7, but none as cool as what he's doing here. So the first thing I noticed is that the melody is going up and everything else is going down. So we've got a little bit of that contrary motion thing happening. But the bigger deal is that every one of the notes underneath it is resolving by some kind of stepwise motion, right? So we've got E down to G sharp. The D sharp stays the same. We got G sharp going down to F sharp. That's a whole step. And we've got C going down to B. So you remember how much gravity we heard just when we did? He's doing that same thing, but he's doing 4 notes of those at a time. If you really zoom out a little bit, you can see that this is a B7 flat 9 chord that is going to an E7. So he's actually added a reharmonization there. He's put a 5 chord, a secondary dominant, in front of that E7. Now, if we look at the next couple bars, the voice leading is impeccable. This is almost like a chorale, meaning that every single voice is moving somewhere else by a step. I just want to zoom in here on the bottom note in this progression. So look at the A. When we go to E7, it goes to G sharp. Okay, so that's the third of E7. That's great. Now we're going to A minor 7, and it plays the 7th, right? G is the 7 of A minor 7. But then look at the next note. G sharp over an A minor chord. That is our minor chord with that major 7. Remember we had that resolution? Now the chord is changing underneath it, so he doesn't even resolve this down to the 6. Instead, he just keeps going with the progression. He brings it back down to G over that A7 chord. Now on bar 7, look at this G7 chord again, and he does the same exact move we saw before. Now this is a little bit disguised because look at this G7 voicing. It almost looks like an E minor triad, right? There's no G in it. There's not even a dominant 7 in there. Not until the next beat anyway. But you can see he's really leaning on the natural 13. And then how he's changing this natural 13 to the flat 13. And then finally, at the end, he uses our parallel thirds to take us from C major 7 to C dominant 7. If you want to learn a little bit more about how Bill Evans gets his signature sound, last week I made a video about all these little sparkly bits that you can add over top of your chords. You can watch that video right here.